tonight. I slept through the natural light, but I'll do it if it feels alright. Alright, alright.
Hello, and welcome to the Central Coast Poetry Shows, and I'm your host, Jim Russo. My reason for producing this show is this. For the last 10 years, I've been reading and attending poetry readings all over California's Central Coast. And during that time, I've had the privilege of seeing and hearing some very talented poets read their own words. This show is to be a platform for those poets to be seen and heard by you. My first guest this evening is Amy Meier. She was born in New York City and has lived in San Jose, California area for over 30 years. She's been a featured reader at Flash Fiction Forum, Stone Griffith Gallery, and 1010 Gallery, and a long-term participant at the Willow Glen Poetry Project. Her work has been published in print and online in several anthologies. In 2015, Amy founded VeteransWrite, a poetry group for veterans and their family members, and anyone else who, as a veteran of life, feels drawn to this group. The group meets on the first Friday of each month to write and share what they have written from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Martin Luther King Library on the San Jose State campus. Amy has read with these groups at the Willow Glen Poetry Project, the annual San Jose Poetry Festival in 2016 and 2017, and will be reading again at the festival in 2018. Now I want to introduce my guest, Amy Meier. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. What we wanted to talk about was VeteransWrite and why and when you started it.
Well,
I should mention that we had the members, a couple of members of the VeteransWrite on a couple of months ago to read their poetry, and it was an exceptional show.
Weren't they awesome?
Yeah, they were awesome. And you know better than I. You've spent more time with them, but I'm just jazzed. And the reception on their shows has been phenomenal. Anyway, I don't want to take it from you. You tell me about VeteransWrites, please.
In 2014, I was at the Geraldine R. Dodge Poetry Festival in Newark. Happens every 2 years. Mm-hmm. And the Wounded Warriors were performing. And I was just blown away. Brian Turner was emceeing at the time. I know he used to live in the Bay Area, and he had moved at that point to Florida. And in the middle of this show, he suggested that anyone who felt moved by the performance consider starting a group in their own geographical area. And I said, I'm on board.
Absolutely.
So I came back and researched. I didn't find any other veterans writing groups in San Jose or the South Bay or up the peninsula. So I contacted the VA, talked with the intake counselors there and the social workers, and they were all, let's do this. And I presented to Poetry Center San Jose, who agreed to sponsor. And then I went to my poetry community and asked for co-facilitators and 2 poets who are also veterans, Jeffrey Leonard and Nick Butterfield, who I had known for a long time, but we'd never really discussed this. They stepped up. And so in fall of 2015, in September, we held our first meeting at Markham House in History Park in San Jose. And then in 2016, we were invited to relocate to the
library.
Well, the library on the San Jose University campus, Martin Luther King Library, so that the student veterans there would have easier access.
Right.
And then in 2018, beginning of 2018, the group agreed that they wanted to open this to be more accessible to anyone, what we're calling veterans of life, which is anyone who thinks that they need to be in this group, should be in this group. And it's an effort to bridge that gap between veterans who feel like they're in their own world, and the rest of the world, and everybody can come together.
And interact, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What a marvelous, marvelous idea. Thank you so much for putting that together, because I know having Emilio and all the others on, Doug, it was a fabulous show. Such powerful stuff.
And it's done a lot for me that I could never have anticipated. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm on this ride, and it's a wonderful journey.
Good. Well, thank you very much for doing that. I ask all my guests at some point, of all the poems you've written, do you have a favorite?
Well, in this context, because there's all different subject matters that I write about, but in this context, I would say Power of Poetry, which I wrote for the inauguration of our VeteransWrite group.
Well, good. Well, I'm going to ask you to, Amy, if you step to the podium, read that poem first, and then give us what else you have. And anxious to hear it. And thank you again for coming.
Much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Meier.
This is titled Power of Poetry. Poetry can be a voice in the wilderness, the voice of the wilderness, heartbeat, drumbeat. Poetry and a microphone can bring a nation to attention. Poetry can demand the right to heal, reject the pretense of resilience, untwist the strands of pride and shame, honor sacrifice. Poetry can be what you make it, give voice to the ones who didn't make it. Bear witness. Whatever you want to say, poetry can be. And I've been considering time and the passage of time. I have a few poems on that subject. And this is titled Time. Seating backward on a moving train, seeing only what has passed, becoming smaller, details blurring. I wish time could be stopped like water in a tide pool. I want to see the detail clearly. Deep purple sea urchins, scuttling crabs, swaying surf grass, before the tide pool washes out to sea, before a new tide pool arrives that looks just like the last, but isn't. If time won't stop for me till time is done with me, till all my future moments have been spent, and my present fuses with my past, then let me be not conscious of time passing. For me, writing does that, and gardening, and being with the people who hold the puzzle pieces of my heart. Each day, let me say, is it that time already? Each day, let me be surprised that so much time has passed. And this next poem is also about time, from a different angle, titled My Time of Day. Waking before dawn, when daylight has not yet curled back the edges on the soft felt blanket covering the sky, when long, slow breathing could be mine or yours, or the angel who rocks us through the night. Just before consciousness tightens the muscles and reties the knots of sadness and regret, before drip, 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 eroding minutiae take up where they left off, when boundaries are porous, when the web that breaks each day and is mended each night connects us each to each, and anything is possible. That is my time of day. And then, of course, we wake and we re-enter this world, and the next few poems I'm going to read are about the world as we find it. This one titled Hunger. Voice as thin as the t-shirt sculpturing the ridges of his ribs, in quiet conversation with his shoes, while his eyes watched one foot step in front of the other, moving gradually toward the entrance of the pharmacy. He never looked up. Still, I heard him clearly say, as he passed me, "Somebody is hungry." Who would disagree? Somebody is the mother of a boy who will never make it home. Somebody is the daughter of a policeman who has been placed on leave pending investigation. Somebody tries to concentrate, but other thoughts intrude. Somebody will say anything, do anything to hold on to power. Somebody fills a prescription for OxyContin and sells it on the street because heroin is cheaper. Somebody does not want to leave home. Somebody does not want to go home. Somebody strings words together, trying to find meaning to cling to like a lifeline. Somebody is hungry. This is titled Luck. A man squats in the mud outside the temporary shelter. He thinks how his life vanished, how luck abandoned him when war found him, how he ran and hid and ran with his wife and children, carrying only their fragile lives, each of their 2 feet, taking one step at a time. He has heard about the man who built a business in the refugee camp while waiting for resettlement by selling bricks he made from the clay beneath his feet. He wonders if the story could be true. Decides, why not? Years later, emigrating with his family to a new life in a strange country, other people will call him lucky. He will not contradict them. And I have a poem that I'm not reading today about the wall. We all know what wall we're talking about. If that wall ever got built, then I think the subject of this poem will come into more focus. This is called Crossing. The Sonoran Desert meditates. Too hot by day, too cold at night, discarding sweaters, empty water bottles, sometimes stuffed animals, shirts and pants, almost like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale. Fast and slow steps, run and walk and crawl across my back. I don't want to be the reason some lie where they have fallen. I think about them constantly. What can I do? I wonder what the ones born on my northern border by sheer luck think about when they grab their bottles filled with spring water, lace up their running shoes. I hope they think of us. And then these next several poems to honor this beautiful area that we live in and how truly blessed we are to be here. This is called Fall Poem. Not in the spring, when an engorged earth suckles its thirsty children, and this great sheltering oak along the north side of my home makes water flow up 30 feet against the force of gravity, and then, with only water, sun, and air, sun, water, magic of trees, births new branches and new leaves, as I have had the pleasure to observe in my brief quarter-century of life beneath its crown. Not in the exuberance of spring, but in the fall, when light keeps looking at its watch and leaving early, when acorns race each other down my sloped brown roof, and fur-clad sprinters chase them all night long. When leaves come home to earth, then I feel the rhythm, the oneness, and the wonder. Then I think, when my time comes to lie down, no longer an observer, how satisfying it would be to have the rain mix my gray ashes with these tan leaves, returning to the living earth beneath this tree. And the next is to honor the beautiful open spaces that we have, and it's titled Open Space in Santa Clara Valley. Wind like lover's breath, wordless because no words are needed, trace hills, valleys, fields, undulating native grasses, gold, white, pink, and purple wildflowers tumble like toddlers downhill across meadows. Open-armed oak, sentinel redwood, observe changing seasons, rhythmic, cycle, and recycle, passage of years, decades, centuries, with the wisdom that comes from rooting firmly in one place. There's that theme of time again sneaking back in. Meditation. The urgency we create, rushing from this to that, a self-imposed illusion, as time itself is an illusion, sometimes stretching, sometimes collapsing. How can we live in any time but this present moment? Feel the sun and shade, taste the honey and vinegar. Here, you are overflowing with life. It is enough.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Meier. My second guest is Larry Hollist. Larry was the second child born to Taylor and Susan in Salt Lake City, Utah. When he was 2 years old, his family moved to Oneonta, New York, a small, picturesque upstate New York college town where he was raised with his 6 siblings. After graduating college from Clarkson University as an electrical engineer, Larry moved to Japan for work. He was an expatriate for 4 years, and in that beautiful country where East, West, and traditional cultures meet, he started writing poetry. He kept his writing to friends and family until 4 years ago when he decided to admit to the universe he was a poet. Larry found his poetic voice when he started attending Third Thursdays at the Willow Glen Library. Larry has lived in San Jose for over 20 years and is inspired and supported in his creative endeavors by his wife, 2 sons, and 2 four-legged furry friends. He has been published in the online magazine The Literary Nest and anthologies What is Love and Spring Mother's Tongue. Larry is a member of Poetry Center San Jose and is a frequent participant in Poets at Play and Word Warriors writing groups. And without further ado, my guest, Larry Hollist. Thank you, Larry, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I wanted you to talk a little bit about your Poets at Play and Word Warriors. It's I'm always interested in readings that are going on to alert others to them.
Poets at Play is a monthly workshop put on by the Poetry Center San Jose at the Markham House in History Park.
Oh.
It's always the second Sunday of the month at 1 o'clock, and they have different guests, people leading the group. And so it can be anywhere from someone this month who's more of a spoken word poet to more traditional poets. Sometimes different forms are covered. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just go out and write. But right. And then Wood Warriors is at the Santa Clara Library on Saturdays, and it changes by availability to having room in the library, but which Saturday of the month that is. But that's led by Lisa Medley, and she has prepared subjects for us to choose from to write on.
Oh, okay.
And I found any time that I go to a workshop, I write about things I would never have written about by myself.
Right.
And it just brings out something that's been in the back of my mind that I wouldn't have thought I would write about, but that needed to be written.
Just that little goose.
Little goose, yeah, and something comes out.
Yeah.
And I've also found that the only way to get better at my writing is to write.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, someone told me a long time ago when we were talking about writing. A writer told me, he says, "You know how to write a book? Write." You just have to start writing
Start writing.
and stop talking about it. Start
Yeah.
writing. So that's the secret to all of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you're participating in that, and I didn't know of those those venues, so that's good for the viewers to know.
Yeah.
So let me tell us a little bit about why you write. Since you brought it up.
At times I feel like I have to. I've woken up in the middle of the night and have had to sit down and write, knowing that I couldn't get to sleep until I've written about what was on my mind. I see things and like, oh, that's a poem, and I got to write it down.
Exactly.
I'll even be in church, and either I'm bored or I hear something from the sermon, and it's like, I need to write about
Triggers
that.
a thought.
Triggers a thought.
Yeah.
So I usually carry a notepad where I go, and even if I don't write a poem, I write a note and
Exactly.
come back to it later.
Yeah, we're all hooked on it. We're all once we start, our antennas are always up.
Yeah.
And it works. Well, Larry, I ask all my guests this: of all the poems you've written, do you have a favorite?
I do. It's also my mother's favorite. So.
That's even more important.
And it's one of those poems. Every once in a while, you get lucky, and a poem comes in your head all at once. And this is one of them. It's called Scrooge's Namesake.
Absolutely, that's great. That's great. Well, I'm going to ask you to step to the podium and read that poem first, and then give us some more. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Hollist.
Scrooge's Namesake. I'm 9 years old. My name is Ebenezer. All my friends call me Scrooge, the old geezer. Yes, he was mean, greedy, never gave to the needy. It's not what he was, but what he became is the reason why I like my name. This came from poems I write at Christmas time. It's called One Day. One day the Savior will call me by name, and I'll hang my head in shame, because I know I've caused him pain. Peacefully he says, look up and see. I've made you free. I've washed away your sins with my blood. My emotions from my soul began to flood. With tears of joy, gratitude, and love, I wash the feet of my Savior from above. As he helps me to stand, I feel the prints in his hands. Then he says with a loving embrace, for you I prepared a wonderful place. You are no longer a servant but a friend. Come and live with me until eternity ends. This is a poem that was published in the online magazine The Literary Nest. It's entitled The Cellist. He took off his shoes and socks to be able to more fully feel the soul of the music. Then closing his eyes to more fully see, the cellist softly cradled the neck of the cello. Then gently, gently, ever so gently, began to caress the strings with his bow. While lovingly massaging her neck, the cello seemed to arch her back with excitement, while the cello and the cellist became one with another. The cellist unfolded himself into her, and her into him, and they into the music, going past the sinews, going past the strings, past the varnish, past the skin, past the notes, past the wood and sinews, going past the present and place, to Leipzig, becoming one with the paper, ink, pen, fingers, and the mind of Bach. Ah, Bach. Bach, back, further, to become one with the sounds and rhythms that were the first muse for what we consider to be humankind. This was published in the anthology What is Love, and it starts a series of poems that are about family members. The day before his senior prom, my younger brother asked, how do you kiss a girl? I nearly didn't make the slight right turn going up the slight incline of Fair Street. What? You've never kissed a girl? My brother has always been Mr. Dudley Do-Right, literally an Eagle Scout. Always wanted to do what the church, my parents, society said was the right thing to do. So it should not have surprised me that he had not kissed a girl. So I start to tell him, first, if you're hugging her, slowly move your face on the side of her face and ease. The whole time I'm explaining how to kiss a girl, my brother's inner voice is screaming, "That's not the answer I want to hear. The answer I want to hear is an answer to a question I don't dare ask you, my macho football playing older brother. The question I want the answer to is, how do you want to kiss a girl?" This is my father's favorite poem. And this was published in the anthology Spring Mother's Tongue, entitled Horse. Date, a Sunday in October, November, or December 1907. Place, Lehman, Idaho. A neighbor's house of John T. and Martha A. Hollist. Parents of Orson Leroy Hollist. Mama, 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 mama. Slow down, girl. What is it? The Hollists have a new horse. Your pa said Mr. Hollist wanted to get a new draft horse. No, 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 no. Their new baby is Horse. They named him Horse. You must have heard it wrong. Maybe it was Haas. No, when they brought the baby to the front of the church, they said his name would be Horse. Are you sure? I heard it right. They called him Horsey Roy Hollist. Okay, get down my basket so we can go call on the Hollists. I'll never hear the end of it until we hear it from them. This is called Houston, We Have a Problem. Pouring milk on his cereal, my son spills some of the milk and says, "Houston, we have a problem." Do you know what that means? I ask. No. So I explain. On Apollo 13, one of the oxygen tanks exploded, damaging the spacecraft and leaving the 3 astronauts with not enough oxygen to breathe. Soon they would be breathing what the others had breathed. So they called Mission Control in Houston, Texas and said, "Houston, we have a problem." I ponder about the spacecraft that we are all on. Have we exploded our O2 tanks? Is it too late to call Houston? Are we already breathing what others have breathed? This is called echocardiogram. Lying half naked in my bed, wishing I was a Greek Adonis. Then I wouldn't be lying here, with a girl from the steno pool, taking notes of my heart. The heart that is no longer beating smoothly, the heart that no longer beats as one, and a heart that sounds like it's pumping slugs. She says, "So, here's your first crush. Here's where your parents taught you to love. Here's where you first met your son. Here's your wedding day. Here is your love for your wife today. Ah, here's the problem. You don't let the hurt go. You don't forgive." Larry's Love Sonnet number 1. When the reaper walks near your door is when you realize how deep you are. Depths you have willingly gone, going a little deeper, joyfully, ecstatically every day. Slowly you become attached, thinking that two being one has always been, feeling all of each other's emotions, so attached that phantom pains develop when not physically near. It is when you think that they are not doing their part, that they seem to be a little further away. So you think, what can I do for them? You become closer just by a change of attitude. Thought of losing you, my love, is my biggest fear. Yet to have something so strong is all I ever craved. This is for my cousin, called Alan. Alan, why'd you leave me here all alone? I had plans that friends we should be until we both could feel weather in our bones. Though you're gone these many years, when I think of you, my eyes fill with tears. Not for the loss of things that once were shared, but the loss of things to be shared. Grandma's kitchen table. Now that dinner is done, Grandma talks about when she was young, as we sit at her kitchen table. As a lad, I would run off and play. Now I stay as we sit and talk at Grandma's kitchen table. When I grow old, I will talk about the people I knew and the tales told as I sat at Grandma's kitchen table. Grandpa was a badass. Wearing his leather jacket, Grandpa swung his leg over the saddle, kick-started the motor, then rode off on a 3-wheel motorbike to sell ice cream. This was for my son when he's in middle school. The goat herder. Before I go any further, I love my son, the goat herder. His flock roams far and wide in the cities and in the countryside. He has the large, the small, the short, and the tall. His every variety and breed, which he's gotten mostly from my wife and me. So this warning I give you true. If you're not careful, he'll get yours too. This next one is a haiku that I wrote simultaneously in English and Japanese about the Golden Pavilion, or Kinkakuji, in Kyoto. Nakite semai, tera no hansha wa oikemasu. Whining cicada, Kinkakuji's reflection ripples on the pond. Nakite semai, tera no hansha wa oikemasu. Whining cicada ripples on the pond. This is a tanka, another Japanese form. Dove under the water. I heard the songs of the whales calling to my soul. Now in Wailua Valley, I miss their sweet harmonies. Dove under the water. I heard the songs of the whales calling to my soul. Now in Wailua Valley, I miss their sweet harmonies. Sketty. Sketty I eat every day. Twice if I had my own way. Sketty would be great to lick if I could just freeze it on a stick. Sketty so long and thin that I found when I suck it in, makes a most unusual sound. Sketty is the bestest food I know, but alas of me, it's begun to show. Meatball, this is Sketty's reprisal. Single meatball sits on my plate. I sigh at my awful fate, just so I can walk through a normal door and keep my gut from mopping on the floor. What more can I say? Then Dr. Atkins took my Sketty away.
Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Hollist. Thank you. I want to thank you for watching our show, Central Coast Poetry Shows. Again, my name is Jim Russo. I'm your host. And remember, words are free. Use them. I did want to make an announcement. This is our 1-year anniversary. We've been doing this for a year now, and it's been one hell of a ride. And stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Find us. Bye.